Hi, Dave here, and today we're going to check out the work of J.C. Park, or J.C. Jongwon Park. He's an artist based in Hamburg, Germany. Um, I like his work. His style, obviously, it's impressionistic, and that's one of the reasons why I'm into his work. He is kind of related to J. Chale Park. I mean, I'm not sure if they're blood related because they both have the same last name. However, in terms of style, both of them are heavily impressionistic. Yes, there are some minor differences here and there, but they're very bold, straight to the point. Um, I do like J.C. Park's older work for the most part, just because of the themes. They're more dark and heavy on the sci-fi elements. A lot of his recent work is more geared towards some kind of project, and the style is way different. The approach is still somewhat the same, but I'm more into the mechs, the vehicles, and that's kind of his focus. J.C. Park's focus: lots of vehicles, lots of mechs, and again, very very similar to J. Chale Park, which I did an art review of in this channel. I would also recommend the work of Eric Gagnon. Yes, I did an art review of his work as well, and they both have that impressionistic approach to their paintings. So check out J. Chale Park and Eric Gagnon. Hopefully, I'm saying his last name right. But yeah, lots of mechs, lots of sci-fi themes, some occasional fantasy concepts, but it's not the majority of his portfolio. And yes, I do recommend you check out his earlier works, just because it's more concept arty, and I'm pretty sure you're going to like his work. So we're going to see some of his videos on his. Oh shit! I haven't been showing the. Excusez-moi, gentlemen and ladies. So this is his portfolio on ArtStation. And yes, if you go back to his earlier stuff, way more concept arty stuff for designs or concepts. And you'll see in the just by the colors, the color schemes, the color palettes, they're kind of the same. Heavy on the metals because obviously vehicles and mechs are involved. And yeah. So we'll move on to his YouTube channel. He does have a YouTube channel, folks. So just check it out, sub to him. He doesn't post often, and I do recommend, again, checking his earlier works, especially from 8 years ago. A lot of his videos are, I believe it was done with CS2. I'm only aware of CS3 and CS6. That's the Photoshop version in my high school years that I've been privy to. And even till this day, if you check out his videos, it still has that nice, it still functions today. The pieces themselves, they look cool still. So yeah. So if you look at his videos, we're not going to play it as much all the way, obviously, because it's going to take too long. But he does start out with a silhouette, and he often paints in a gray background, and the way he paints a silhouette, it's rather light. I would usually expect a darker, like a black silhouette in the beginning, and then maybe you can tone it down over time or layer by layer. But he does it differently, where he paints in grayscale in a very light value. And yes, there's some light and shadow here, but the value difference is it's clear, but it's not too far apart. So it's almost like a quick watercolor kind of blob. And then over time, yes, he does use layers, but it's not very organized. So that's great for me, just because I'm not organized as well. But within that silhouette, he'll add some more values, more contrast. And he likes using the soft brush a lot to create these sorts of reflections. Not a lot of brush variety in his work, I think. Just based off of the pieces I've seen. Maybe a bit here and there, but it's not that. He's not like Craig Mullins. Yes, he is impressionistic, but he's not that playful with the brushstrokes. I mean, there is some playfulness, but it's not varied as much. He likes to keep it simple. And then he'll add, excuse me, and then he'll add some color over time. And notice how he doesn't use a lot of layers. He does flatten things or merge layers from time to time when he's done with something. And he kind of reminds me a bit of Frank Hong. If you've seen any of Frank Hong's environment concept art pieces, I did an art review of his work as well, yes. It does have this kind of look. It's very unclean, and that's not a bad thing in art. It does show this. It shows that human side to things. And it does have a couple here, and you can see grayscale sketch. Same thing for this guy. And he has a bit of Sparth in him, because Sparth likes to do a lot of selections in his work. And yes, he's also into the custom shapes types of techniques. But when it comes to the way he paints within certain silhouettes, and he does remind me a bit of Sparth. Although Sparth is more organized just because it's his style. You can see a lot of cleanliness, or the edges of his work are way... He's more graphical, I think, Sparth. He's not very painterly like J.C. Park here. And again, with that soft brush, not a lot of brush variety. And again, you can see the paint strokes. It's kind of what's the word? Jibby jabby. I'm trying to make a word for it, but it's direct. This is one of my favorite ones just because of the mech. It's kind of like a mech. It reminds me of the anime Love Love. It's one of the anime I've watched recently. And in this case, he is using, again, he's starting the painting with a rough silhouette, and it's kind of a lighter gray, not exactly a black. And I think he has the brush in, he has the water edges turned on in Photoshop. That's kind of my guess here. And then over time, he'll paint over that silhouette or that impressionist type of blobs or blob set. And then he does enjoy using the blending modes for his, and with the blending modes, he'll use that along with his soft brush for the effects. I'm guessing color dodge, maybe some overlay. But he does have that nice, sketchy, impressionistic look. Pretty cool. Here he did start out with a rough sketch. He's not as draftsmanship-ish as J.H.L. Park, because if you've seen any of J.H.L. Park's sketches, he's way more intense and just crazy. And you can see that level in his paintings as well. For J.C. Park sketches, he likes to keep it simple, almost like a contour drawing. He's similar to Feng Zhu in that way, the way they do their pencil sketches. It's not even that clean, but over time, I think he started it with painting in multiply mode on top of the sketch. And then eventually he just painted over everything. Nice. Again, if you zoom in on his work, it's not even that clean, but it's okay because it makes sense in the full view. So here we have another mech. Reminds me of one of the mech designs of Alex Eacham. He does have one mech piece, which I found through Pinterest. Yes, I did an art review of his work as well. And yes, he is also somewhat impressionistic, although the style is a bit more opaque compared to J.C. Park. Like gouache, oily. J.C. Park is more... There's a lot of opacity in his work, or a buildup of paint. So it's not going to look as thick. Again, with a very, very rough, impressionistic silhouette that's kind of light. It's almost like a watercolor wash again. And then he builds it up over time. You can see a lot of opacity in his work. Brushstroke overlaying the brushstrokes beneath. And it doesn't look clean. And he likes using the selection tool to kind of help save time painting within the main silhouette. So that's kind of the way he manages his layers. He's not that intense, kind of like John Wallenberta, where he just goes rogue. If you've seen any of his tutorials on Gumroad, he has so many layers, bro, and it's just intense. But for JC Park, he likes to just keep it to this mech, maybe the mech behind it, maybe the background, and then that's it. And then to save time, he'll paint or he'll select that layer of that thing he wants to edit, and then that's it. Most of his work is just, he's more of a painter, I guess. And here you'll see him use the soft brush, and he'll play a lot with the blending modes to achieve this sort of wash-like effect. Even the way he colors with his airbrush or soft brush, it provides that wash-like effect. Whenever you let's say if you've painted with watercolor before, you can create that wash-like effect by by painting on wet. If you have a wet on wet kind of technique, you can. I'm pretty sure you are familiar with this kind of look, and it is quite achievable traditionally. So obviously, it's going to be way more easier if you do it in Photoshop or Clip Studio Paint. Okay. Same thing here. And his perspective shots are not that complicated. They're rather simple. And, excuse me. Again, you don't need to if you're focusing on design. Even in this painting, you can see a lot of opacity within his batch of brushstrokes. In a way, it's also like John Park. Because John Park, I don't think he uses a lot of layers. I mean, yes, he does have to, he's very sharp-edged or graphical in that way. But he's not he's trying to be more efficient. So there is a bit of that in JC Park as well. So in a way, he's a combination of J. Cheo Park and John Park. Nice. Anyway, moving on. Here we have another environment, and you can tell this brush was set in water edges. The water edges option in the brush options was turned on for this. If you're a Photoshop user, you know what I mean. It has that look to it. So rough, impressionistic, and then he'll paint over it. Bit by bit. Do you see how he paints? It's pretty rough. Very blobby, not blobby, but impressionistic. I don't have another word for it. It's just direct, and it's kind of scribbly sometimes. It's not too clean, but it works. Because if you keep painting over something, and as your brush gets smaller and smaller, you can get more detail anyway. As you can see with this castle part right here, it's way more detailed compared to this foreground area right here. Just spend more time in your painting. And again, he likes using the soft brushes to create those rather soft washes or gradients. So he's playing with the levels, and again the soft brush. So not a very complicated process, very simple. So we're going to rush through his paintings that I picked out from his art station. So let's begin. Now this one's more sci-fi, which I like. It reminds me a lot of Eric Gagnon. But yeah, now the perspective is somewhat off here, but you get the gist of it. Now this one, I actually saw this painting on Pinterest, and I'm glad that I found out that it's actually JC Park's painting. If you focus in on this guy, just on the details alone. Is it that complicated? Are the forms that clear? No. It's rather impressionistic, but you get the feels of it. And it has that atmospheric vibe. It's almost like a wallpaper, except the detail is just not there, but it works. It's epic looking. And it's somewhat flat. A lot of his paintings are somewhat flat, like they're not super skewed or again the perspective shots are rather simple. Um, Same thing goes for this guy. Um, uh, Reminds me of one of the ships in the Matrix, the one with the hover pads on the side. Now this one is a bit more dynamic, just because of the way the ship is pulled, and a bit of photo bashing here and there, but it's not that intense. This one has way more mood and atmosphere in it. These trees right here, or debris, they look like a watercolor painting, wet on wet. Look at the wash effect in the sky. Pretty nice. And you can tell it's raining. It's kind of like a soft drizzle rain. Now that's cool. And a nice hood here to show that it is actually, like, there's some contextual information involved. Ooh. Nice sci-fi forms here. I do need to practice these sorts of forms. The bevels, the extrusions. So this one is not sci-fi, it's more fantasy-ish. But the approach is still the same. Rather impressionistic. Sci-fi design. Oh, this one is pretty cool. The water part, I'm not sure what this thing is, but I like these sorts of forms right here. Reminds me of the film Avatar by James Cameron. It has that jungle vibes to it. Reminds me of Feng Zhu. Feng Zhu likes doing a lot of spiky stuff. I think he's into insects based off of his portfolio. And I think he did mention it one time in his videos, in one of his videos. Now I do like this shot. It's way more dynamic. You're seeing it from, you're slightly above these characters. Maybe you're standing on some kind of rock. But I do like the scene. The sky is well done. He did bash it in, but it fits the painting. It does feel like they're about to go to war. So that's cool. Here we have, it's almost like a cover or like a book cover. Nice butt, but again, impressionistic. Yes, suggest the shapes and forms of the armor are suggested, but it's not that clean, and yet it still makes sense. This one is a complicated view. It's pretty hard doing this kind of view. So whenever I see environment art done in this view, and it's painted without a 3D base, I'm often impressed. Because it's hard. But it's nice. Very atmospheric. It's almost like a keyframe shot from a game. This one's more basic. The shot, I mean. Did he bash this in or he paint? Or maybe I think he just painted it in for the most part. It reminds me of Jongwon Park. Jongwon Park also likes doing a lot of flying vehicles aside from his environments. Very impressionistic, sketchy even. Now this one is more of a keyframe. Two guys fighting. It looks like it has something underneath, but if you zoom in, it's just a bunch of lines. It's suggested for the most part. So if you're worried about adding detail, or if you're not a very detail-oriented person, you can take advantage of your style or laziness, and you can just make it work. Just make sure it's suggested well. I like the shot, very dynamic, and they could be some kind of invading force, perhaps, diving in on the city. Reminds me of one of the Marvel films, Guardians of the Galaxy, where they with a very weird ship and they started attacking the city. Right in the end, it's like a keyframe. Oh, the shot is dynamic here, and you're seeing it from below, worm's eye view. If you zoom in on this character, look at the gun. Look at how basic it is, and yet it does work ish. This guy was bashed in, but it's fine. Reminds me of the Terminator. One of the mechs kind of looked like this in the Terminator Salvation film, I believe. Cockpit design. He does a lot of vehicles, and I'm guessing he has the same approach. Maybe a rough, basic grayscale, and then over time, layer by layer, but not too many layers. Um, he'll eventually get to something that's pretty detailed. Let me have some water here. Excuse me. Very sci-fi-esque. Lots of mini forms or mini details. The silhouette is super basic. Well, not super basic. I'm trying to simplify his work too much. It's pretty strong, but the amount of details within it, like the amount of lines and cuts and openings and bolts, I guess, it's a bit intense. Especially in the darker areas. Because whenever you do sci fi, there's often this lighter area and a darker area. There's often like a padding on top and then the thing below it. The thing below it has a lot of openings and stuff. And if you zoom in on those parts, is it even that detailed? It's not, but it looks detailed. So I think that's the trick for impressionistic types of paintings. Just make it look detailed, and it's fine. Now, obviously, if you're trying to create something more specific, well, shit, good luck. If you're a painter, more of a painter like me, yes, I think it is quite possible. So I do recommend checking out JC Park's work. Oh, the butt design of this flying thing reminds me of one of the videos here. Let's go back. Right? Same kind of effect or design. Some bottom lighting here coming from something. Reminds me a bit of Sparth. The way this ship is kind of positioned. The composition is kind of Sparth-ish. Very blobby or very bulky, round. A very fat mech. Reminds me a bit of Optimus Prime. Just the way of his kind of bulk, his mass reminds me of Optimus Prime. Yes, this one's pretty dynamic. It's like a keyframe again, or not a keyframe, but a wallpaper. If he added more detail, it would be way more amazing. But this is okay. Even the lighting of this suit is realistic. Nice orange here. I mean, everything is orange. God. Even if it's not super rendered, it looks somewhat realistic because the values or the hues are right. Or not the hues, the values. Because even if this whole thing is orange, look at how it's very intense in one area where it's being hit by light, and then in the shadow part, it's not just one kind of orange. There's a bit of everything. Or there is some kind of value range. It's not just one shape or one value, rather. So it does look somewhat realistic. And even this part right there, you can see some blue-gray lighting. It's coming from the background or this side of the image being reflected on the armor. So you can tell that this guy is within the environment. Look at the backpack of this guy. Is it detailed? It's not, but it looks like it has something. It's suggested. Even the way this gun is designed, the shape is there, the impression of that gun is there, but it's hardly detailed. So no worries. It looks good in the end. So more vehicle designs. It has the same kind of vibe to it. Now this one is also a pretty cool perspective shot. It's a bit dynamic. The architecture looks great, very, very sci-fi-ish. The background is just one silhouette. Now in this case, he did clean up the edges. I'm guessing he did this with a lasso selection. It does make it look cleaner. It's a nice contrast to the amount of detail in this architectural element or structure. Look at the way he did the lighting here. It's kind of sunset, and you can see it, the ship being somewhat lighter. So there is this nice atmosphere. Like, this place looks big, and I like it. And I'm kind of fascinated or curious about what's on the other side of this structure, just because of the lighting in the background. And it almost feels like a wash, like a watercolor wash. More vehicles. I like this guy. I wish he did more mechs like this. It's kind of Gundam-ish. Now this one is pretty detailed. Pretty intense. Reminds me a bit of Shinko Kim. Shinko Kim, I think he did One Piece from this kind of view, or it's close to this kind of top-down view. And yeah. But the amount of detail, it does remind me a lot of Untitled Park. He can really go into the cuts and the bolts and the hydraulics and stuff of that nature. And the lighting here is well done. It's kind of not midday, but maybe 9 a.m., 10 a.m., or maybe even 8 a.m. Again, light values, and then over time he builds it up bit by bit. But a lot of it was done in this stage. Everything else is just an addition of contrast and detail, and some lighting effects. It shows you how the most of the work you have to do is really in this part, right here. Everything else is just trying to make it look pretty. Again, with his vehicle designs or with his sci-fi designs, he has the same kind of vibe or look. He has a design style to his style. It's sick. Now this one is more of it's kind of like a mech android. Very aggressive looking. Look at the way he did his hand. Very, very basic. It's not even, it's an impressionistic painting. Reminds me a bit of Feng Zhu. Because Feng Zhu doesn't always use a flat brush. Sometimes he'll use a somewhat opaque brush like a JC part with a bit of texture. Same thing for his ship designs here. Nice butt. Nice breakdown here. Whenever I see art or art sheets like this, I am impressed. Just because I'm not a very breakdown kind of person. So if you're kind of a painter guy, but you're interested in design, you can do it the way JC Park does it. Simple line sketch. Not even that detailed, but you can do it the way he does. Because it's still impressionistic, but you can get the gist of it. And I'm not sure if this is useful for a 3D modeler, because there are some that require you to be more detailed. But for me, this looks intense already. But a lot of it is still suggestive. So it's nice though. So if you're into the design parts of things or side of things, it is maybe possible. More mechs. Lots of stuff here. It's a bit too much for me. Like this part, this chest is a bit too big. Maybe it's some kind of gun, perhaps. Who knows? Same thing, same aesthetics here. Reminds me a bit of Sparth. I think Sparth does a lot of Halo work. So a lot of the designs are kind of in this fashion. Same kind of approach. Still very sketchy and impressionistic, but it's just way more refined, I guess, or smaller, or more concentrated. This one, you do have an environment in the background, just a simple suggestion of it. Um, it's somewhat clean compared to, say, this. And you can tell he did separate this ship, or he dedicated this ship to its own layer. And again, he did use that soft brush kind of lighting effect, along with the selection tool. Lots of design stuff here. Very, very intense. Lots of cuts. Again, same approach. Very, very light. The value range is not too far apart, but over time he'll add more contrast and fix the lighting. Maybe adjust the levels here and there, but a lot of it was solved in this phase. So you don't have to solve everything in this part. Or you can do it phase by phase. Because sometimes I work on the lighting here, but you don't always have to. You can just focus on the design and then maybe the lighting. Because whenever I do grayscale paintings, I always think of obviously the lighting, but it doesn't have to be right even in that stage. I can focus on the design, increase the contrasts, the highlights, so the lighting, and then just the finishing touches. And maybe a bit of color suggestion in this part, because you can always bump things up with some layer effects in Photoshop or Clip Studio Paint. Now this one is way more smooth. It has that Sid Mead type of style or design aesthetic. And then he went back to his older self. Lots of intricate stuff right here. I love the shot. Very, very dynamic. The design of this architectural thing, nice. It's rather clean. Oh, you can still see the line sketch here. It's pretty rough, but it's there. Is this too detailed? It looks detailed, but it's not. But it looks nice and effective. And I like how the paint is somewhat scratched up. It looks so nice. Some more ship designs here. So this one, it's more of like a keyframe. They're kind of transferring this mech. It's somewhat clean. Not a lot of texture involved. It's somewhat graphical. Well, not too graphical, but it's almost gouache-like. Because there's hardly any breakage in the paint edges. It's pretty opaque. Like super opaque. Not like gouache and less like oil. Basic brushes. Even the way he did the sky is basic. Again, you don't need a lot of complicated brushes. Again, it has that Sparth vibes with the way the thrusters were done. The city was photo bashed in. I do like the lighting here. It kind of shows that there's a building kind of overlaying it, or the shadow of a building kind of encompassing a part of the ship. It makes it feel like it's part of the environment. Nice. Now this one's pretty moody. It's pretty dark, and I like it. The branch texture here, or the scribble texture here, reminds me a bit of a Li Xingyan or Lixinian. I think his name is it's pronounced Li Xingyan, I think. But yeah, I like it. And the mood here is way more intense. A lot of his paintings are kind of bright, but this one's rather dark, and it has way more atmosphere. It's kind of bordering in on the storytelling side of things or narrative concept art. I think he has a video of this guy on YouTube. Same approach, same thing for this guy. Way more detail in this front leg because obviously it's in light, and since they're both the same leg anyway, you don't need to detail both. Same thing for this arm. Even the way he does his people, it looks real, effective, even from afar. I think most of us have trouble painting in this small scale version. It tends to look more like a shadow when I paint it. So, yeah. And yes, he does have a video of this chick with the bike as well. Same design, the helmet design and the actual bike design is the same. So there is some consistency in that. But yeah. So we're going to end the video now. So check out JC Park's work on ArtStation. You can follow him on his YouTube channel. And yes, he does have a website, and I've linked the links in the description below. So if you're trying to be, if you want to get good at painting, I do suggest you check out every single one of my videos. And of course, check out JC Park's portfolio. And so yeah, keep drawing, keep painting, keep learning, and stay free.